Now, once again, Raymond Arroyo.
Welcome to our World Over After Show. I'm Raymond Arroyo, joined by the novelist Ron Hanson. His new book, She Loves Me Not. It's a short story collection, and it's getting rave reviews. The New York Times raved on it, the Washington Post, I raved on it too, and you should get it. Read us an excerpt, Ron.
Okay.
There's a wonderful story, Sleepwalker. First, set the story up for us, and tell us where it came from.
My brother-in-law, Bill Roeder, died this summer of Alzheimer's. And this is an actual experience between him and my sister Alice. And it'll be explanatory when I go through it. It's the Sleepwalker. She watches his slow decline as she would a fire at home on restful evenings, opera softly emanating from the stereo in another room, perhaps a glass of cool Pinot Noir at hand, and he patiently staring at nothing at all, lost in thoughtlessness, as silent as smoke, as the flames eat away at the charred wood, feasting on all the good of it. He was once so many people, a hardy farm boy, wild seaman, a cook on a Portuguese fishing boat, a roughneck on oil wells, then an oil driller himself, an inventor, a father, the owner of restaurants and farmland and commercial properties, yet ever laughing and lovable and in awe of learning, and now unlearning more with each week. Reminded of his accomplishments, he smiled as he said, "I did that? Well, I'll be damned." And now he is a wanderer, bewildered by unfamiliar rooms, finding his way outdoors in raw weather without a coat and needing neighbors to guide him back to an address he can't recall. And a toddler, too, forgetting etiquette, getting into mischief, eating ice cream for breakfast with his 4-year-old granddaughter, who tells him he can, who gives him permission. The loneliness is the hardest part, the memories that she can no longer share with any meaning, or saying things of importance and realizing they will not be recalled, and fearing the probable time to come when she will be feared, a wife to a man for whom husbanding has ended. She is becoming increasingly a stranger invading his littler portion of reality. Some nights, she hears him walking from room to room as if hunting his history, his mind, the hurly-burly life he's lost. She aches to think what it must be like to be him, to be helpless, puzzled, surprised, infantile. Hundreds of faces without names, recognitions of him that he is not equal to. But he finds his wife sleeping on the frilly daybed in the feminine sunroom at the front of the house, and he looms over her like his old self. And in the sentience of that night, he says in his sudden and momentary wakefulness, I know how hard all this is for you, and I appreciate what you're doing." Then he retreats into the hallway and back into his illness. But those words stay with her and are enough.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
And it captures so many people's experience
Exactly.
with Alzheimer's.
Yeah.
The coming and going, they're here and then they vanish again.
Right. Yeah.
You know, it's beautiful. And again, the specificity of your writing, and it's really one of the hallmarks. It is so specific and true. Now, some would say, these are such hard truths. Why do you want to put such uncomfortable, sad, miserable, gloomy, deadly things into print? Why focus on those things?
Well, part of it is I think that people who are in misery want to share that misery in some way or know that somebody else has experienced the same thing. And I think that's the communal nature of literature, that all of us are kind of cooperating with each other and telling these stories in order to make our lives better, or to say that this is not going to last forever. Yeah.
And I also love that your work, and you quoted in a speech once, actually it was in Stay Against Confusion, you quote John Cardinal Newman.
Yes.
And he was forced to defend having literature courses at a Catholic university. And his argument was, you're right, if literature is to be made a study of human nature, you cannot have a Christian literature. It is a contradiction in terms to attempt a sinless literature of sinful man. How does that inform the way you see the subjects of your work?
Well, my model, of course, is Jesus, who faced reality squarely and didn't recoil from it, didn't say, well, you people do not belong. He invited the prostitute and the drunkard into his company. And I think that's what fiction does. It seduces people into reading about a reality with a hope that underneath that is something that's going to inspire them or change them.
And you have an obligation as a writer to record reality.
Right.
As
Exactly.
you see it. I mean, that Flannery O'Connor used to talk about that being the hallmark of great fiction.
And your reality is not anybody else's reality.
It's colored, it's shaped.
Exactly. And part of the fascination of fiction and literature in general is to see the world through others' eyes and see how they respond differently to the same stimuli.
We have a number of emails, and they're asking, they said they want to write about their personal past, but there's a concern, this one person, Terry, writes, worried and concerned that by revisiting the past, he's going to revive things and people he's left behind, and maybe even bad choices.
Right.
What would you counsel someone like that? They're worried about, I guess, leading people astray through a story.
I think your past should inform your writing, but maybe it's not good to write about your real life. I think to create a character and have all your experiences funneled through that character will take a life of his or her own, and allow you to address these issues without pulling off the scab.
How do you start? When you, I mean, obviously you have that first inspiration, like the Oscar Wilde story you talked about, where you come across a little article and it says Oscar Wilde visited the music hall and said X, Y, and Z. That's all you have to go on. What do you do from that point? Do you outline? Do you break it down? What's the first thing you do?
I usually have signposts along the way, so I know that I have to get from point A to point D, and then from D to J.
But you know where you're going.
I know the outcome, and then I allow myself to create as I'm writing these things, because sometimes there are events that I didn't know were going to happen and things that are said, but part of it is getting characters that you can formulate in your mind and putting them in the room together and seeing how they feed off each other or respond or get angry about.
Yeah, it really, I mean, I find as the acting training comes in awfully handy, because you basically are building characters, and then you have to let them live and walk around, and they do sort of start using you as the puppet, you know, as things go on.
Yeah, I'm always surprised by things that people say, and they're my characters. They shouldn't surprise me, but in fact they do.
They do. Yeah. What's the most upsetting and the most wonderful thing about writing and a writer's life?
The upsetting thing is being unknown and people not buying the book, or reviews don't really bother me that much, but I've been lucky with reviews.
You have sterling reviews, and if there was any justice in the world, all these books should be on the bestseller list, because they're really well done. I mean, there's an attention here to detail. You know, it's like when you see a fine piece of furniture. You can go to IKEA, but why? When you can sit on this beautiful Chippendale thing. This is the Chippendale of literature. It's beautifully crafted.
The high point of writing is actually a sentence at a time, and at the end of the day saying, wow, I did something really good. Of course, there are those times when you're gloomy, but I remember sometimes I get giddy over just a sentence I've written, and where I thought every word there was perfect. And I was once at a bookstore reading, and a woman asked me to read a sentence in one of my books, and because she thought it was a perfect sentence, I was so glad, because when I wrote it, I thought it was perfect. That's as close as I get.
Well, I can tell you, this book, She Loves Me Not, has tons of perfect sentences. Ron Hanson, thank you for being here. She Loves Me Not is in bookstores everywhere. It's new and selected stories of Ron Hanson, a wonderful way to sort of enter into Ron, and after that, get Mariette in Ecstasy, Atticus, Hitler's Niece,
the whole
thing, in that order.
Right.
That's it. Great to see you.
Thank you, Raymond.
Thank you.